You see this little guy? It's a shrimp. It's friendly, right? Not cute necessarily, but harmless. Just wait. According to author Mike Tidwell, these tasty morsels reproduce at an exponential rate, which means if 3 successive generations survive to adulthood, the resulting shrimp mass would be equal to the volume of the sun. Just a few more generations survive, and every inch of the known universe is filled with shrimp, a mass of crustaceans expanding outward at the speed of light. If Mike's math holds up, the shrimp apocalypse would be upon us. So what does all this have to do with cursed places? Well, the thing that keeps events like the shrimp apocalypse from happening, it's the natural balance of things. And in the Louisiana swamps, things are savagely out of whack.
The swamp is really in trouble, and everything's gonna die.
The land is vanishing faster here than almost anywhere else on Earth.
It's hard to imagine, but all this was farmland.
25 square miles disappear every year into the ocean. And some point to a curse from 100 years ago. A curse that would make all the land wash away. Just outside of New Orleans, there's a place called Manchac Swamp. And here in the bayou, there's a story of a local priestess who cursed the land and the people living on it.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Sam.
I'll take it.
Sit down. Glad to have you.
So you guys know why I'm here, right? It's easy to read about a legend on the internet and dismiss it as folklore. As we search for the intersection point between myth and science, where do you start? Well, you start with the myth. Only a nerd would start with the science.
Anybody got anything on the curse of Aunt Julia?
She practiced a lot of magic,
Right.
and she died on September 29th, 1915, which just happened to be when the big storm of 1915, the hurricane, hit. When she died, she put a curse on this place where the swamp would die and bring devastation to all the people here.
So here's how the story goes. In the early 1900s, there wasn't much in the way of hospitals or doctors around here. So if you got sick, you went to Aunt Julia Brown, and she used folk medicine and hoodoo magic to cure you. For years, everything was great. There were satisfied customers all around, and she helped anybody who needed it. But something changed. Julia's worldview went dark, and some say she cursed the land with her dying breath.
30 years ago, the swamp was so thick you couldn't walk through it. Now you can see for a mile in any direction.
So you guys feel like the swamp is getting killed?
Choking to death.
It's choking to death?
Yeah, it's deteriorating at a rate we can never stop.
So you could say Aunt Julia's curse kind of is coming true, huh?
I believe it. I do. It's too much of a coincidence.
But one thing can be certain here, everything is getting worse. It's not getting better. Everything that she predicted is now here.
I'm a sucker for a good story.
Can I get another beer? Anybody else want a beer?
And when I sit and have one or, 2 or, 5 beers with a group of people, I want to believe the stories I hear. But still, the locals from Manchac Swamp blame Aunt Julia's curse for any number of strange tragedies and catastrophes. Hurricanes, bridge collapses, unexplained disappearances, and rampant crime that's lasted for 30 years. That's a lot to credit to just one person, no matter how nasty her curse. So who was Aunt Julia Brown, and why would she have cursed her homeland? What made her so furious that people still believe to this day that her rage transcends the grave? And where could she have gotten this power from?
So tell me about Julia Brown.
She's a trick-or-treater healer, a landowner, one of the midwives for the area's voodoo priestess. In those days, those are people you got to deal with.
Right.
But she's kind of creepy, Miss Julia. Julia Brown says stuff like, when I die, we're going to be floating. We're all going to float down the bayou, dead go to float.
Aunt Julia was born into slavery, and this entire region was built on the exploitation of enslaved labor, just like the White House. But then, after the Civil War, slavery was abolished in 1865, and Julia managed to get a plot of land here in the paradise of Manchac Swamp. With the death of the cotton plantation industry, turns out they can't turn a profit without free labor. A new business takes center stage in Louisiana, the lumber boom. Suddenly, everyone wants cypress, and these towns have an endless supply. Money's flowing, things are good. But of course, that's really only if you're white. Aunt Julia saw the destruction of the natural world around her, and virtually none of the profit going to her or her community. Meet the new boss. Same as the old boss.
So, Aunt Julia didn't live here specifically, but this was the kind of place she would have lived.
Right.
And this is what everybody lived in at that time.
This
You see
is
this little
actual-
tin roof and everything like that.
Yeah.
So you have this world you're building, and then now the loggers are coming through, and they're tearing everything down.
The thing is, too, when you cut the trees down, now there's water. You see, like back in here,
Yeah,
there
it's
used to
new
be a
growth.
field there.
Right.
So not only you lose the tree, you lose the land, too.
Right. The logging is actually stealing the land
Yeah.
right out from under the people.
Yeah.
Aunt Julia Brown, she's a hoodoo lady. She's angry about the way them loggers was tearing up the swamp. She'd be out on her porch playing her guitar. I remember she was always singing the same words. One day I'm gonna die, and everything's gonna die with me. This was a good place to live, good place to be, until she cursed it. Never been the same after that old woman died.
This audio is recreated from an interview conducted with Helen Schlosserberg, who lived a few houses down from Aunt Julia. She recounts how Aunt Julia cast a dark spell on the land before she died, and the moment Aunt Julia was being lowered into the ground, the curse became real for the people who lived through that fateful night.
September 29, 1915, she dies. That's the day and night the big hurricane comes in and goes to wiping them out. And everything go to floating and get flooded. Like she said.
She died end of September. Only remember that 'cause it was while they was putting her in the ground that the hurricane hit.
So this hurricane, it came through as she was being buried, right?
Yep.
Lots of people from Frenier and Napton and Rudock were all there for the funeral, and they found themselves in a real bad place when the winds picked up and the water started rising.
That's what makes her curse feel so real, is
Right. Because it's the night awake.
Whether you believe in curses or not, you gotta give Aunt Julia credit for her impeccable timing.
They said the wind picks up and the water starts lapping against the railroad tracks. And then the rain starts.
I remember the water rising. I remember thinking, this is it. We're gonna die. But the train was blowing its whistle at the station in Rudock.
And the only people that survived are the ones who made it to the train.
That was people that heard the sound of the horn when the train was blowing the horn. Those are the ones that made it.
Swimming in pitch black water at night is already a nightmare. Add in huge waves, howling winds, and the screams of your friends and neighbors echoing around you. And that feels like an act of God. Now you start to feel like you're cursed.
I can't imagine how scary it would have been when the water's rising, it's the middle of the night, and the train blew its whistle.
They blew and whistle, and that's a couple of miles away.
And if you couldn't make it,
Swimming against the
swimming
tide.
through this in the dark,
You know, they got gators and snakes everywhere.
you would definitely go, oh, that's the curse. That's old auntie coming to get us.
You're looking at it right there.
She's been singing that song your whole
there-
life.
And there you are.
Oh my God, and here it comes. you'd be like, holy.
In 1915, Aunt Julia Brown cursed the land and the people in the Louisiana Bayou. And on the day of her funeral, a hurricane obliterated the logging towns and most of the people who lived there. Since then, over 40 named storms have ravaged southern Louisiana. But the locals say that the hurricane of 1915 was different, almost supernatural. Not only in the timing, but in its unmatched destruction. That hurricane gave Aunt Julia's curse the gravitas to survive 100 years. I'm meeting Professor Brian House at a hurricane simulation lab in Miami to see if science and legend align.
The storm I'm interested in is a hurricane in 1915 that hit New Orleans where, ostensibly there's a curse around it. Do you know anything about 1915?
Of course, 1915, no satellites. They didn't have nearly the information. You had to rely on shipping. It was known that a storm was coming, but didn't appreciate how strong it could be. When it came into the Gulf, that's when they started to realize too late, really.
I mean, that storm came ashore and wiped out 3 whole towns, just wiped them off the map. This is one of the things you study here is the loading, right?
We study the loading on structures,
right,
yes.
Right.
This is the biggest wind over water tank where we have a controlled wind field going over the water.
This indoor lab can recreate the forces of a Category 5 hurricane, with huge waves and winds over 215 miles an hour. Since the hurricane of 1915 is the event that solidified the locals' belief in the curse, I want to know exactly what it was they experienced. So we're going to use a simulation to find out if it was just the eerie timing of the event, or was there something else that made that particular hurricane feel supernatural.
We're ready.
All right, talk us through this. Okay.
All right, so this is the mock-up of Aunt Julia's house, or a typical kind of shack.
See a lot of all the waves are breaking.
Oh, yeah. Time to move. Oh, God.
Wow, you get into that full wave
God.
into that front of that structure.
Yeah, you'd be freaking out.
Just for fun, or, not really fun, but for the hell of it, pretend you're in this house. It's 100 years ago, and you knew this woman, Aunt Julia, and she's furious about her swamp getting destroyed. And you knew about her song, and about the curse she said was coming. And now on the day of her funeral, the most violent storm in living memory destroys nearly everything in its path. Would it turn you into a believer?
We lost the roof. We lost the roof.
Came off.
It's starting to lift up the front.
It would feel like the end of the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is the perfect visualization of the destruction that storm wrought 100 years ago. But how does that storm compare to the one we all know about?
That storm had a surge similar to Katrina, up to like 20 feet. Big waves, you'd be hitting buildings, structures, everything, delivering that load.
Both Katrina and the 1915 storm nailed the southern Louisiana coast, and they both caused Lake Pontchartrain to flood. But Katrina hit east of New Orleans and surged closer to Mississippi, while the eye of Julia's storm hit Manchac Swamp and New Orleans more directly.
Had this 1915 storm struck today, the impacts would be way worse because of the degradation of Louisiana's wetlands. So a lot more of that area is vulnerable to flooding. So this would be a really catastrophic event had the 1915 hurricane occurred now. Or
Yeah, it's hard to think of Katrina as being worse, but it could have been a lot worse.
could have been a lot worse for New Orleans, that's for sure.
So looking at the power of that wind and that storm and in that tank, you sort of begin to understand, particularly if, that hurricane blew up, the day you're putting Aunt Julia in the ground, you would definitely be feeling like her curse was coming true.
Not to be ageist, but that was then, and this is now. So does the curse still somehow have teeth here in the 21st century?
The same every time you turn the news on, something bad.
For some people in the bayou, the curse permeates all aspects of their life.
It's got to the point where you can be robbed or killed at any place at any time.
To some, crime and a string of mysterious disappearances are just part and parcel of Aunt Julia's doom.
And then we've had several people go off in the big swamp, never to be seen again.
Never to be seen again.
Yeah.
Bones are being found and things like that.
Right. All right.
So is this just local lore? Or do the men and women who deal with these issues every day have a more logical explanation?
Officer Irvin Reed,
Yes, sir.
I want to say thanks for having us out tonight.
Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah. What do you see most of in terms of crime out here?
Mostly murders over the past 6 months, disappearances, kids and women getting taken.
But where are they taken to?
Well, they're still trying to figure that out now.
In the New Orleans metropolitan area, there are 87 current missing person cases. That's over 30% higher than the national average.
Where are we going to go to?
We'll be going on Old Highway 51.
The swamps around here have a reputation for swallowing things up, never to be seen again.
Can we get in there, you think? You guys want to try to go in there or what?
Watch your step.
This be a good place to get rid of a body.
Oh, yeah, we get a lot of that.
The swamp really can swallow things up and make them disappear.
Oh, yeah. Or given enough time, what goes down must come up, so.
Have you ever heard of the curse of Aunt Julia Brown?
Yes, sir. I'm pretty sure it exists in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the effects of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so don't tell anybody, and I don't want to put him on the spot, but the truth is, when the cameras stopped rolling, I cracked his hardest case, and then I sprained my hand from all the high fives down at the precinct. But I am definitely clocking the fact that a police officer claims to have seen the effects of a curse. But still, I feel like there has to be another explanation. One that maybe has some grounding in science and data. One that I'm hoping to get from Jeff Asher, an ex-CIA analyst who studies crime data for a living. As us massholes say, he's wicked smart.
Is there anything mysterious about the high crime rate?
Murder's the one stat that you can't juke. And so it's the kind of statistic that most people find more reliable. And Louisiana has led the nation in murder rate for 30 straight years.
Wow.
So this is a bar chart race. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these before.
Yeah, these are great.
So this is the top 10 murder rates per year, each year since 1960. You would expect variation, but it's depressingly stable.
For 60 years, Louisiana has ranked in the top 10 in murders per capita in the U.S. And for the last 30 years, the New Orleans area has had one of the highest murder rates in the entire country.
That all makes sense, but what's special about Louisiana?
There's not a lot. Louisiana is generally a poor state, but not the poorest in the nation. Firearms are generally easy to come by, but not the easiest in the country. I'm trying to describe what's happening, but it's depressing and it's mysterious. Kind of like the Mississippi River. It does what it wants to do, and there's not a lot that we can do to interrupt it, at least in my opinion.
Right.
A curse can be the language of those trying to explain the unexplainable. But while we might want to blame a curse for the long-lasting scourge of the crime in the area, the truth is there are too many confounding variables to be sure. Still, there's an inherent human need to have concrete explanations for why things happen. And when events occur that are so odd, like a mysterious string of deadly bridge collapses that keep happening in this tiny area of southern Louisiana, well, even I start to wonder. In the Louisiana Bayou, I've been talking to the locals, and they believe a healer a hoodoo practitioner named Aunt Julia Brown, is responsible for a slew of tragedies that have ravaged their community since her death in 1915. All the terrible things happening in Louisiana over the past 100 years, from hurricanes to the destruction of the swamp, is because of Aunt Julia. But my new best friends think the curse goes even deeper.
In 76, a barge hit the bridge and took out 2 sections of the bridge there.
Mm-hmm.
And the causeway has been hit, 3-4 times, and knocked sections out of it also.
Right.
Taking a scientific approach to a curse is hard, but I have to start somewhere. So I'm looking for statistical anomalies, things that stand out, things that help me understand why a group of people might believe they're cursed.
Every 10 years, it was 64, 74, 84.
Right, pretty regular.
The murder and crime data is one thing. There's plausible explanations for that. But there's another piece of data, something that pops out of the noise. There's an unseemly amount of catastrophic ship strikes and bridge collapses in this region, more than anywhere else in the US. Much more.
Is this the bridge? Yeah, that's the Pontchartrain Bridge. So what the hell happened here? Well, the bridge opened in 1956, and since then it's collapsed 3 times. With cars on it. Oh yeah, with cars on it. Oh my God. Well, they were on it before they fell in the water. Over there is the Judge Seaver Bridge. It also collapsed back in the 90s. Then in 2008, the bridge malfunctioned, and a car fell into the canal down below. Killed the driver. Why did it happen here so much? It's mind-blowing. I don't know. It keeps happening, man.
Keeps happening? That's an understatement. If you look at the bridge collapses in the entire United States because of ship collisions, 1 in 4 happens in this area. That means an area that takes up less than 0.5% of the United States is responsible for 25% of the bridge collapses caused by ship strikes. Now, strangely, the exact same math works when computing Williamsburg, Brooklyn's contribution to the man bun pandemic. So that's an anomaly. But is it evidence of Aunt Julia's curse? Or is there a more logical explanation?
We're just cruising on down the river. We got about 40 miles to go. We're headed down into the main part of the harbor in New Orleans.
Yeah, great. Yeah, how do we speed up? Here?
All right, John.
Full speed ahead.
Chris Ryder is a retired skipper who oversees a simulator that trains ship captains to navigate the local waterways. But how does he explain the deadly tragedies that keep happening here?
This is the Greater New Orleans Twin Bridges. And this is where that ship, the Brightfield, he lost his engine right here. I was coming up the river when he was coming down. That's when he called me. He was about right here. He said, Chris, I just lost my engine.
Wow.
And we knew where he was going. It turned into the bridge. They had 50 people on it board. And between myself and another tugboat, we managed to rescue half of the crew.
I would not make a good pilot. Sorry.
See, now
you just give him a wave. My bad.
Oh, my word. We are in deep doo-doo here.
In trouble. I just work here, man. You're the pilot.
I know, you bail it out.
You're the pilot. Let's get going, because I don't want to see. We'll leave this in our... Pretend it didn't happen. Leave this poor guy in the water. Yeah, we'll just keep going. So, just let me get this straight. These waters are so dangerous because...
A certain time of the year when the river's rising, it picks up all of the debris off the riverbanks. Logs and trees. When it gets bad, it gets real bad.
Right. Yeah.
It's mesmerizing. It's an optical illusion, so you got to really get up and shake yourself. And when you get in the lake on a black night, and you get driftwood stuck in your propellers or your rudders.
Logs and trees in the water? Now, what does that remind me of?
They logged the cypress. And there's a lot of cypress logs that they left that are still just as solid today as the day they cut them because they've been in the mud.
So ships are ramming into bridges in part because they're dodging a maze of floating trees. So could it all come back to the logging industry? The same thing that pissed Aunt Julia off in the first place?
What happened here, man?
They're logging again, bulldozing again, and the big machine they got right here.
Yeah.
That's known as a marsh buggy right there.
And it just makes a big trail of...
Yep, and they cut and
Smashing
chop and
through.
push to the side and cut and chop. There's about 25 or 30 miles of this right now cut. If the spirit's still alive and well for Miss Julia, this is gonna make her mad again.
Whether or not you believe in Aunt Julia's curse, her vision of the future seems to be shockingly accurate.
I don't even know what they look like.
It's a giant rat with a long tail.
As soon as y'all see him, y'all can start shooting.
If I told you that a business tycoon of a certain famous hot sauce that goes really well on eggs bought a bunch of giant South American rodents to create a new fur trade in Louisiana.
1957, they brought the Nutras from South America to Avery Islands, where they produce Tabasco hot sauce.
Oh, yeah?
And that invader has single-handedly destroyed tens of thousands of acres of the bayou. Would you believe me?
Nutria is a rodent that grows up to 26 pounds. They're big, big rats.
Oh, there's one right in the grass.
Boy, that's a big son of a...
Got him. That was a good shot. That's what we're after, boys. That's a good-sized nutria there.
That's my idea of a nightmare.
That animal eats a quarter of its body weight each day. You can look at the teeth on these things. They burrow the root out, so when the root's exposed, then obviously the mud's exposed, and that's when you get the erosion. They'll completely take a 20-yard diameter island in a week it's underwater. Just completely.
In a week it's underwater.
Absolutely. It's hard to imagine, but all this was farmland.
So they're just
Completely chewed
literally
down.
sinking the bayou by themselves.
Yep.
The damage that's been done by these creatures is overwhelming, and the residents of southern Louisiana are fighting a hopeless rearguard battle against something like 20 million invaders. So they've started a bounty program.
Let's go get some more.
$6 to any man, woman, or child who turns in a nutria tail, dead or alive.
In my bank, in my bank.
Good job. That's two big ones. Well, good deal, man.
Yeah, nice.
Thanks for saving the marsh.
Yeah, hey, $12.
Hey.
Dinner's on me.
Aunt Julia said she was going to take the swamp with her when she died. And between the devastating logging and the insane destruction caused by the rodents of unusual size, it seems like Aunt Julia's curse is coming true. The swamp is disappearing.
This whole area used to be full of cypress.
This was a massive cypress swamp. You can still see some of the stumps. Some of those stumps are so big you could park a pickup truck on them. So they're very similar to redwoods. That's the closest cousin to bald cypress is the redwood tree.
Okay. So tell me the factors that are going into the destruction of the bayou. What's destroying this swamp?
Well, too much flooding, not enough nutrients, and one of the main constraints for this whole ecosystem, hundreds of thousands of acres, is saltwater intrusion. That's probably the #1 issue.
So you're saying that salinity is destroying this swamp?
Yeah, and everything's gonna die at some point. No one believes me though, so.
Dr. Schaefer says that millions of nutria rats eat the saplings of the trees, and the old logging canals have destroyed the natural levees which allow salty ocean water to run backwards up into the swamp, killing the old trees. So it's the perfect storm.
This is a great example. 0.2 instead of 1.3. So the soil was seeing an order of magnitude more salt than the water. That will actually kill a tupelo, it'll kill a maple, but it would kill all the other species in the swamp.
Okay.
The swamp is really in trouble. It's in big trouble.
Logging began the destruction of the swamp, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and one terrible decision led to an absolute catastrophe. The Army Corps of Engineers started building walls along the Mississippi River in 1930. It seemed like a great idea at the time. Stop the constant flooding, the destruction. The problem is, the river used to bring 85 million tons of soil and spread it over the bayou each year. It was an incredible act. The earth healed its own scars, whatever the hurricanes or logging channels or erosion washed away. But we've locked the river up, and that soil now dumps out into deep water instead of rebuilding the delta. Combine that with rising sea levels, and 25 square miles of coastal Louisiana falls into the ocean every year. But because the causation is complex and multiple, people throw up their hands and cry curse. But really, it all comes back to one factor. To us.
Cypress. They live about 3,000 years.
Oh, wow.
And unlike other trees, cypress does not fall over in hurricanes. It's got a massive root system.
Right.
It's only about this deep,
Right.
but it goes for 200 feet in both directions, and so it forms a tapestry with all the other trees.
Right, so they interlock and they...
To blow one tree over, you've got to blow 100,000 trees over.
Right, so it doesn't happen.
And so Hurricane Katrina, we modeled cypress swamp below New Orleans, 12,000 acres.
Right.
Brought Katrina back in, flooding was reduced by 82%.
Right, just the swamp there. Hugely
It would have
important.
completely protected New Orleans. You know, if I had it my way, we would plant at least 10 million cypress. We can probably save 2/3 of coastal Louisiana. If we're smart enough.
Look, I hate easy answers because they're usually wrong. Life is complicated and nothing is simple. That's on my coat of arms. So I'd love to tell you there's nothing to the curse, but everything Aunt Julia said seems to be coming true. So let's go a little further down the rabbit hole, just in case. Did Aunt Julia really use hoodoo to unleash 100 years of pain and destruction on the swamp? Or did hoodoo somehow give her the ability to see into the future? In 1915, a hoodoo priestess named Aunt Julia Brown sang a song, and her neighbors thought it was a curse. She threatened to take all the land with her when she died. So far, it seems like it's coming true. But was it a curse or just a coincidence? Or could it have been a profound warning from someone who could sense that there was trouble on the road ahead? But how could she know? And what is hoodoo anyway?
Just imagine being on a cotton field or on a plantation and being brutalized, and your spouse and children being brutalized, and the idea that a god or a power or a spirit can seek revenge on massa. It was the one thing that the enslaved African had that gave them power.
Hoodoo originated in West Africa and adapted under the chains of slavery, whispered on ships and plantations. It manifested in the desperate desires of the powerless, stripped from their homes, lives shattered, brought to a hell they did not understand. Hoodoo is also called root work, using the power of tree roots to conjure spells, to heal, and even to curse.
So tell me about root work.
So at the root level of what root work and hoodoo is, it's about nature. And using nature, plants, mosses to heal. And then the supernatural aspects of it do carry from an ancient West African perspective that trees carry a spirit, wood carries a spirit, the ground that it grows in carries a spirit.
Wow.
So it's more than just healing, ingestion, using the botanical nature of what these plants are, but there's that spirit power. It's definitely something out here with us. It's responding to the energy. Now, what we will do is take the 9 grains against poverty. It's a ritual that we do to bring blessings. It's also a way of sort of appeasing Julia Brown and making sure that we leave this space with the good energy as opposed to anything negative. So you're going to kneel over the bowl.
All right.
I'm going to sprinkle you a little bit.
Sure.
The energy is infectious. Whether summoned from the spirit world or purely human in nature, Prince Tai and his friends believe the power to connect with the other realm is unlocked by the roots. There's magic in the roots. Magic strong enough to unleash a 100-year curse. But it raises a question. Is there any kind of scientific explanation to the magic of the roots?
The more people look, the more we realize that plants actually work like a community. Research is showing that the plant-fungal relationship is a symbiotic one. So we know plants in an ecosystem divert some of their resources to other species. It's not just their own species.
So a plant from a totally different species will help other struggling plants.
Absolutely.
It's amazing. And what kind of things would it send?
Nutrients. So the fungal network could tap into another root system and distribute those nutrients throughout.
Nutrients. So it would be interacting with these grasses and communicating with basically every plant.
Right.
Anything with roots.
And that's kind of important because the system around here is pretty much starved of nutrients.
Prince Tai said the trees carry a spirit.
Wood carries a spirit. The ground that it grows in carries a spirit.
Turns out, cutting-edge science is basically saying the same thing. Dr. Dimitra and other scientists around the world are only beginning to understand these fungal networks called mycorrhizae, which allow trees to communicate through the roots. In parts of British Columbia, this root network is literally the difference between life and death. Young saplings in deeply shaded areas of the forest don't get enough sunlight to survive. So other big trees, often hundreds of feet away, pump sugar into their roots and keep them alive. If the cypress roots in the swamp have this network, then the roots are, in a way, magical, just like Aunt Julia said. And it could be the key to restoring balance and the swamp saving itself. So there could be a massive spiderweb network of fungi that spread out from this tree.
That's right. Any of these plants could potentially harbor mycorrhizae. So really what we want to do is take these back to the lab, take a look. And if they're present, then we know that they're out here benefiting the ecosystem from
So if we can
photosynthesis.
find that fungus, this tree will have a much better chance.
The only hope is these little roots right here.
How far across the swamp could it stretch?
Potentially forever.
And that may not be the only magic hiding in these roots.
What are we hoping to find in the roots?
It's called a dark septate endophyte. They're enzymes. There have been experiments that have shown that you can convert plants that cannot tolerate salt into plants that can tolerate salt.
Wow.
Just by adding endophytes or introducing endophytes to those plants.
And that's worked.
That has worked,
Right.
yes. Just by adding an endophyte from a plant that lives on the coast, they were able to convert rice plants into plants that are able to tolerate salt. So we know it can be done.
Right.
And our hope is that that is one way to counteract the stressors that cypress are experiencing.
Although more research is needed, if the microscope shows that endophytes have colonized inside the cypress roots, these super tiny organisms could hold the key to saving the wetlands.
Well, let's take a look.
As you can see, this is a long process.
We're gonna figure it out
It's
right
like-
now, Doc.
Sometimes it's like, yeah, finding a needle in a haystack.
No, sure.
Oh, that's what you're looking for?
I'm in New Orleans with Dr. Dimitra Kendalepas, where we've just taken root samples from cypress trees in the nearby Manchac Swamp. We're now back at her lab looking for fungi, which would be evidence of some sort of crazy, magical symbiosis that allows trees to communicate and share nutrients. And this could be the swamp's only chance of survival.
So what are you looking for now again?
You want to find structures of the mutualistic fungi. For dark septate endophytes, you're looking for the microsclerotia. They look like little balls inside the cell, little dark balls. Oh, yeah, that's what you're looking for. If you look at the thick strands, you'll see the darker structure sort of near the top of that root. Yeah.
That ball there?
Yeah, well, it looks like balls have been stuffed into a cell.
Oh, yeah.
Those are dark septate endophyte.
Wow.
Those are so finely branched that it's really easy to absorb anything and distribute those nutrients.
How does that happen?
I wish I knew. I wish I knew.
Then we'd be all set,
The
right?
big question, how did they do it? Evolution works all random and it's accidental. If there's something out there that happens to make that environment advantageous to it, then that'll perpetuate.
Right.
This successful lab test is proof that the key to saving Louisiana's bayou might lie in the cypress roots themselves.
We know that all of the flooding and all of that destruction that happened with Hurricane Katrina could have been avoided if that swamp was still in place.
Right.
The cypress trees also are able to sequester carbon. So if that tree is pulling carbon out of the atmosphere and it's burying it in its roots, all of that carbon is coming out of the air and not perpetuating the cycle of climate change.
So the thing that could save the world is these roots, basically.
Yes, cypress can save the world.
Cypress would save the world.
Long before Aunt Julia ever practiced her hoodoo, before even the American slave trade, the people in West Africa believed the roots held power beyond our understanding. It's taken science hundreds of years to catch up and confirm that, in a way, they were right.
There's a lot that's been said about Aunt Julia's curse. It's said that she cursed the swamp. I don't necessarily agree with that.
Oh, really?
That could have been a prediction to get across to these people, live right, get it together, or all of this could be gone.
The interesting part of it to me is a curse comes from transgression, right? Like you've done something to offend the gods, you've done something wrong. And all the ills that are assailing Louisiana, all the things that are destroying the wetlands, comes from things we've created, come from problems that mankind has made. You know, the land is cursed, absolutely. And it's a curse brought on by the very thing Aunt Julia was railing against. You know, that you were destroying her forests, you were destroying her land, and it was all going to get washed away. And that's exactly what happened.
So the curse of Aunt Julia wasn't a curse at all. Maybe it was the wise words of a woman whose connection to the earth far exceeded any understanding science could offer at the time. The Louisiana Bayou is in trouble, but not because of magic, but because of mankind's short-sightedness and the laws of unintended consequences. The accelerated effects of the hurricanes are because of all of it: logging, canals, the vanishing swampland, climate change, and even the invasive rodent that destroys everything in its path. These are all man-made maladies. We created imbalances in the natural order. And as for the possibility of the shrimpocalypse, I got some good news. Shrimp are delicious. But in the connectedness in our ecosystem, we can find balance. There are hundreds of people who are dedicated to restoring order in the bayou. And maybe the best hope of all is in the roots. The very thing that gave Aunt Julia her power. It could ultimately be the key to ending the curse.